Welcome back in the Feed Your Brain podcast. My name is Max, and I have a special highlight for me actually in the podcast that I've been very interested in for like a couple of years. Listened to his podcast and Ram Castillo's podcast, who's an Australian friend of mine, also a podcaster, and a very impressive founder from the United States, known in the tech industry for years. Very good friends with Kevin Rose, Tim Ferris, Gary Vaynerchuk, of course, names that everybody in my community at least knows. So very interesting in that regard. Previously founded the Web App Conference, is now founder of Treehouse, which probably a lot of people also in Germany know, because they bring affordable technology affordable technology and education together, and give people the chance to really learn more about coding with different online courses they have, and they have had 180,000 students in their courses. So very interesting. Ryan Carson, the name behind all that. And I'm very happy to have you on the podcast. Happy to be here.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm excited to chat and share some things I've learned, and appreciate having me on the show.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Shout out to my co-founder Luca, who somehow gave us the introduction and just brought us together. I mean, very special chance. I know. Have you been on a German podcast before? Or is that first time?
I think so. I love chatting to the German audience and to German entrepreneurs and podcasters, and I think you all have a really interesting take. So I'm excited to be here.
Nice, fantastic. In what regard? Do you think we live in a little different space than the United States?
I think, and this is, a bell curve, right? So I'm going to generalize, knowing that generally people fit on the bell curve. And I find kind of your commitment to data and reason and discipline and process really refreshing. Mm-hmm. And I know that's not true of everybody that's German, but I think I enjoy the frankness of the conversation in general. So I think, gosh, in America, everyone is so emotionally driven all the time that it's actually nice to have just a frank conversation. So I'm excited about that.
Cool. I sometimes when I talk to Americans, they think it's very strict, and they have the feeling that they can't get close to Germans because we are very, very once driven. I would say that, and maybe we don't have like a little more emotion in our like talking, that people really get confused when they talk to us.
Yeah, but I just see that as a cultural difference. It doesn't mean you don't feel and that you're not having the same deepness. So I'm married to a British woman, and I had to adapt to the way she would speak and the way she would show her emotions. And at first it was very confusing, but now I understand, like, it's just a manifestation of the way culturally you were taught, but everything's still there. So yeah, I'm excited about it.
Right. I mean, differences somehow always come together, which apparently you and your wife has also happened.
We figured it out.
you figured it out. Very interesting. I mean, just to give a little background, I saw this morning on Instagram that you woke up at, you said, you just corrected me in the pre-talk, at 4:30 probably.
Yep.
What I saw, you are on your way to like a Spartan race, which you have done before, I saw, but is that something that you have in your mind for the next months, or what's happening there?
Yeah. So basically, since January 2017, I began waking up at 4:30 a.m. And that allowed me to have time to complete more tasks, to stay focused and to clarify what I was doing during the day. Mm-hmm. And then it also gives me time to have a short workout. So I've kind of optimized everything. I used to work out at a gym. I cut that. Now I work out in my basement. And so the story on Insta this morning was me walking to the rope in our front yard. Mm-hmm. So I actually, climb ropes to build strength for Spartan races. So I was just going out to the rope in my front yard. And again, that's a time management thing. If I can do that at my house, I don't have to go to some gym and waste my time. So, and there's a big connection between mental fortitude and progress at work. And I think endurance is a really important characteristic that I didn't appreciate for a large part of my career. I didn't connect the two. If you have physical endurance,
Hmm.
you can then apply that to mental endurance at work when you are tired and you don't want to make another call, you don't want to send another email, you don't want to, have one more meeting. You can say, I can do that physically. I'm going to do that mentally.
Right.
And it's a decision, right? And that has been a game changer for me.
Interesting. I mean, the parallel that I can see here is that what I've had from my experience, that all young people that have somewhat been in like high class sports activities before, they mostly, and it's probably also very generalistic, but in most cases they're also very disciplined in regards to work. And I think I think Claude Silver from VaynerMedia, she said before that they like to hire people that have been very on a high class level in sports before, because they know they have a certain level of commitment and discipline towards their job that they execute on.
It's very similar. It's essentially the ability to do difficult, monotonous work every day.
Right.
And it's interesting how, there is a direct correlation between success at work and that kind of work in your physical life. So I'm starting to think the same way. Like, I want to look for people who are drawn to athletics. I actually don't care about sports.
Mhm.
I don't have a favorite team really. I don't watch sports, but I found that the discipline of training is a massive unlocker of potential.
Right, definitely. I think there's also a fantastic book. I think The Spark or whatever it's called. Who's
I've heard
also,
of that, but never read it. Is that the idea of the book?
I think it more or less tells people to how like mental endurance is in relation to sports, and how sports can actually develop a mental endurance over time. I think Tim Ferriss also recommended that book. I'm not 100% sure. You know him probably better than I do, but I think that's what it's about.
Cool.
Mhm. I think somehow, a cool turn here, because what you just mentioned is to have somehow mental endurance during the beauty of your work, which of course is not always a beauty. Also, it can be very messy and dirty in some regard. Maybe for the people that don't know you, which is probably not a lot, but for the people who don't know you, maybe you can give them like a short story of your story. Yeah, I think that
Yeah,
would be
sure.
cool.
Yeah, you bet. So I was born and raised in Colorado, in a small town called Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I was very fortunate to have, a computer in my home when I was young. I graduated high school, which is you're kind of 18 when you graduate high school in the US, around 1996. So,
Mhm.
we had an old Apple computer in our home. And so that kind of exposed me to technology.
Mhm.
And then I was really lucky to have a teacher in high school. Um, the most uncool teacher in the whole school changed my life. And she walked up to me in the hallway and said, you're doing well in some of my other classes. Have you ever thought about programming? And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And she said, well, it's you tell the computer what to do and it does it. And I said, sign me up. That sounds really, really. So that moment changed my life because it was really where I got exposed to the ability to create with technology. So instead of being a consumer, I could actually build things. So went on to the university, just went to a normal kind of state-run university called Colorado State, got a computer science degree. Again, privileged because my parents paid for that. I went through without any student debt. It was pretty straightforward, and then graduated. And then I had this moment of just kind of clarity where I realized, I don't know what I don't know.
Mhm.
And I've lived in the same place my whole life, and that's not bad. But I wonder if there's things that I don't know because I've never been exposed to them, and I can't even see that I don't know. And so I just decided to move to another country. Um, and so I watched a movie, picked England because it looked nice, and I moved to England. And I've
And you
kind
get
of
a visa and all that?
America and England have this cool program called the BUNAC program, and it allows you, if you graduate college, to work anywhere in England for a year.
Okay.
And it's just this little blue card, and you could be a bartender, or you could be, a consultant or a programmer. You can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I just got in a plane and left. And I remember my mom cried a lot, and I was like, I'll be back. Don't worry. It's fine. And so I went to England, and then I got my first job. And I asked a recruiter to get me a job. Hey, I've got a computer science degree. Find me a job. I don't know how to do this in a foreign country,
Mm-hmm.
And so he got me a job in Cambridge in England, and I was a web developer. Really simple. It was a tiny little web shop called Spider Creations, because it's the web. Haha.
Spider Creations.
Yeah. And it was, there was like 5 of us. And
when was that, time-wise?
This was about 2000, 2001.
Okay. So just at the beginning of like the whole web thing.
Yep. Yeah. The dot-com bubble hadn't burst yet. It was still building, and everyone was talking about it. And, but this is where, again, my life changed. So I got the interview based on the fact I had a computer science degree. And then I walked in, they said, do you write Cold Fusion? And I was like, I don't know what that is. And they said, oh, it's this language, it's like HTML. You can figure it out. Or it's like PHP. And I was like, okay. And I bought a book, and I was like, I could do that. And I got a job. And that's when my life changed, because I realized my parents had just spent, $50,000 to $60,000. I had spent 4 years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the job I just got didn't map to my degree. What is wrong with this system? This is really inefficient. And I'm very mission driven, and I believe that the most important thing I can do in life is help other people. And I want to help as many people as I possibly can. And so it just bothered me. I thought, I'm getting a nice job because I'm privileged and lucky that I went to college. Like, what if you didn't go to college? You could still do this job.
Mm-hmm.
What if you didn't study computer science? You could still do this job. So the system is terribly inefficient. And people are getting hurt, right? So it bugged me. And that's the moment that Treehouse was born in my mind. So this is 2000, right? And I didn't start Treehouse till 2010. So really, this is a story about discovering your why, discovering the thing that really drives you. So the moment I realized that the system was broken, is the moment my why, the seed for it, was planted. And why means like, why am I doing this? Like, what really drives me to wake up at 4:30? And so then it took me 10 years to like figure out how I was going to attack that problem. So I was a web developer for 4 years, and then I met a girl. And so I never did go back.
Everything changes.
But like, this is why my mom was crying really hard. She knew, I would meet somebody and never come back. So, so we got married, and then I decided to start my first company. And again, it was very simple. I thought, this running this company stuff can't be that hard. It's just do it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started my first company, built a simple product that was for sending large files that you couldn't email, coded it myself. I found a customer that paid me £3,000 for it,
which is a lot. I mean, at the beginning, right?
It was a lot, but it was kind of like, here's the software forever, right?
Oh, okay. Right? It was not like a license or whatever.
No, it was like in perpetuity, because I was just trying to do anything I could to close my first deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I got this £3,000 check, and that changed my life, because I thought, holy cow, this is, about 3 months of pay for me at the time. So I could, pay my half of the mortgage. I could, pay my half of the food bill. So let's do it. And ran that company for a while, and I can dig into that. But then after that, I started another company that was more about training. I was like, I care about teaching people and helping people. How can I get closer to that?
Mm-hmm.
So we started doing in-person training for how to be a web developer. And it was literally, let's find a teacher, let's pay them to teach for a day. Let's see if we can get 20 people to pay us to learn for a day, and let's see if that works.
But was that again on like the backbone of something that you thought was missing? Because apparently there was always something that was missing in some way, right? That you
Yeah,
realized there needs to be a solution for something. And was that the same thing then at that
it
time?
was. Yeah, so it was based off of, me continually having to buy books, and
Hmm.
the internet was still pretty primitive back in 2004 even, so you could Google things, and there's some things around on YouTube when it launched eventually, but there was just no way you couldn't even learn programming very well. So, I was buying a ton of O'Reilly books, and taking a bunch of people's code and then adapting it. And I just thought, this is crazy. You know, you can't learn just a simple how to build a web app. There's no good way to do this. So let's do a 1-day workshop and teach people. So
Hmm.
yeah, it was based on that. Um, and then we did one, and it worked in London. Got 20, 30 people to show up, and they paid us, and they had a good time. And then we thought, let's do another one. And that, worked. And then we did another one, and it kind of worked, but not super well. But then we did another one, and it worked. And we just kind of slowly built out
Learned.
this small training company.
Hmm.
And then I did that for 5 years, just kind of cranking away. We did more and more of these things. We did conferences. And so I want everyone listening to kind of hear that, again, this is a gradual journey. You can think of a winding road through a map, and there's lots of pitfalls, and there's lots of mountains, and there's lots of valleys, and, there's lots of, swamps, and I just was trying to get closer to, how do I change more people's lives and help more people using technology? And eventually, I was getting pretty tired doing these big conferences and workshops, and it became all about having to get a sponsor to pay, for the event, and it became about selling tickets, not changing
Mm.
people's lives, and it just started to turn into something. We had maybe 10 to 15 employees, where it wasn't about changing people's lives and giving them education. It was about selling tickets and getting sponsors. And
Mm.
I just thought, this is not what I want to do. This isn't going to truly change anything. Um, and so I talked to my wife about it, and we had just had our first kid. And I think I realized I don't have forever to make an impact.
Right.
I have limited amount of time on this earth, and I need to get to it.
Especially if you have a child, then you realize how less the time gets again.
Yeah, you're like, I have less time now. It becomes very clear you're going to die at some point.
Right.
You can see your mortality, because there's now younger people, than you. They are up and coming. You transition from up and coming to outgoing, right?
And of
you're
course,
like,
you also want to leave like a legacy for your child, right?
yeah, all that, and I was just like, I need to get to it.
Mhm.
I want to make significant impact if I can on people's lives. So one morning I woke up, and my wife and I were brushing our teeth, getting ready for the day, and I was like, how do we take this thing we've built and scale it and make it affordable and make it accessible for real? And she said, why don't we hire a teacher, film them teaching, and then put it on the internet? It's like, yeah, let's do that, right? And
But you
again,
thought about like YouTube or like a self-hosted platform then?
I can't remember. It basically lynda.com existed,
Okay.
and that was there, and that was kind of it. That was really the only place to learn online through
Mhm.
video. I can't remember if YouTube was launched yet. I think it was in 2010. I should probably check on that.
But probably
But
only Gary was on it with his one
right,
videos.
yeah, pretty much. But there wasn't a good school online, so I was like, yeah, let's just try it. And this again is, it's easy to look back and say, I have 80 employees now. We've taught 850,000 people how to code. We've raised $13 million in venture capital. It sounds like, wow, we're successful. But the
Mhm.
truth is, on day one, it was like, wow, let's film somebody with a white sheet behind them and then put it on the internet. I mean, the first version of anything is always bad.
Right.
So that's where Treehouse officially began. and now we've transitioned. We're now helping companies create talent. So in America, we have a really brutal problem with diversity and equity and inclusion. To be blunt, America was founded on slavery.
True.
And it's really infected America deeply, and so now we have privileged people winning. We have white people like me, white males like me, where we're winning, right? We start companies, we invest, we make money, and then underrepresented groups are being held out. They're being kept out. And and I just decided that, this is not okay. We can't just have, white males like me winning and participating in all the wealth creation in America. And then I had to get brutally honest and look at my own company. So I had built a company, we were 80 people, and actually my company was mostly white and mostly male. So if I believe that this is important, then why did I do it?
Right.
Am I a hypocrite, or do I not believe, or am I just naive? So I spent a whole year getting educated about this. Why is this happening? And why am I a part of this? And how can I change my own company?
So from like an organizational perspective, or from like a personal perspective, to understand why you actually hire those people?
Both. So why have I done this? And then how do we change it?
Got it.
And, in America, you can get educated about these things. And once you understand the kind of institutionalized sexism and racism that affects America, then you can start to change it. So then what I realized is, gosh, there is amazing talent everywhere. And really all we need to do is change the way we hire to give access, because the door is closed right now to people that don't have a computer science degree. The people getting computer science degrees are white males. So we got to change that. And then I think this will resonate with you and all of your German listeners: apprenticeship.
True.
Let's actually let people learn on the job, right? What better way could there possibly be to get educated, right? So the idea is, let's find amazing talent with potential, and then let's invest in them. Right. Let's actually invest in them so they can learn on the job,
on the process, right? Yeah.
Right, and then turn them into the talent we need. Isn't that more sustainable and better anyway?
Right.
So we basically tried a program. Let's go. We have an organization called the Boys and Girls Club here. It's essentially a nonprofit that supports primarily underserved communities, so their kids have a place to go after school. So they end up being mostly Black and brown kids. They get fed, they get supported while their parents are, finishing work.
Amazing.
So we went to them and said, we want to invest in this community. We want to hire your amazing graduates. We need them. This is not charity. And, this is not a handout. We want to invest in them. And then let's put what they said, okay, we'll help you find an amazing class that want to do this. And then we said, we're going to then give them a scholarship to our tech degree. And our tech degree is an online boot camp. It takes about 6 months. It's 10 projects that you make. They're real. They get graded. You get code reviewed. You have a community to support you. It takes about 6 months, but you do it 2 hours a day. So the idea is you hold down your current job while you're learning the very basic skills. It's like if you want to be a carpenter, you may go to night school to learn, how to use a saw, how to use a hammer.
Right.
Build 10 basic projects, a deck, a chair, a table, right? and then after the 6 months, then you get hired as an apprentice. And then it's like, okay, now we're going to take your ability to build a deck or a chair, and we're gonna use that to create, a whole house for a customer.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And I'm going to mentor you, on the job. And so then we hired them as apprentices, and we booted that up, and it worked. It was essentially a side project for Treehouse.
Wow.
And it worked. And it's kind of obvious, I think. Of course it worked. Duh. I mean, you're taking amazing talent, with raw potential, and you're investing in that talent, and then you're hiring them as apprentices, right?
Yeah, but you first have to like observe the market. I mean, it's also like, of course, it's about HR and people, but of course, you need to understand what your company is like and what you need to further develop and bring in like diversity into the company to get even more successful, right?
Right. And so, I hope what's relevant to your audience is what actually happened is we ended up building a product. So as soon as we saw that we could change our own company, then we realized, wow, we could actually change other companies. And therefore we could change more lives.
Right.
And so then once we built this kind of MVP, inside a Treehouse, we realized, wow, let's go find someone else to install a pilot program like it. And so I went out and started talking to companies, and we got a ton of companies to say yes. So now MailChimp, Envision, Chegg, MindBody, and then a bunch of Acquia and a bunch of other big companies have started to say, we want to invest in creating talent. We want to have a diverse team, And so now we're plugging in, it's called Talent Path, is this new product. And it's the fastest growing part of Treehouse.
Wow. And it's so, part of that new company that you somehow developed in the sub region of Treehouse.
Yeah. It's essentially our B2B product, right? Yeah. So now this is what we sell to businesses. And so what's cool about, I'm going to try to connect the dots. What's interesting about the story is I took my deep passion for changing people's lives. I kind of stumbled around trying to figure out, okay, how do we really do this? And eventually tried to figure out, how do we solve a problem for ourselves, solved it, and then realized we could scale that solution. And then I went out and asked people to buy it, right? And that's essentially the entrepreneurial, path. And so I think, and I didn't know if it was going to work, in hindsight, I didn't know if companies.
But it worked for you, right? I mean, if it worked for you, you knew that you already had one customer.
Yeah.
So there are probably a couple of more customers interested in the product that you like.
Yeah. So it was a big entrepreneurial, journey. And now we're in a spot where we're scaling that and growing it and learning, how to do that. And we still don't know everything, and we won't know everything for, forever. But we're learning a lot.
I love that. I mean, as you just mentioned, it's really a long and very deep journey. Funny, actually, today a friend called me, and he also described like a hill that you walk as an entrepreneur, and you somehow build up the skills and the knowledge on the hill until you're on the top. And if you're on top, you really understand, okay, what actually is my vision? Because you look down to the town or to the village or whatever, and you see, okay, that's my vision, that's my why, and I want to strive for the goals that I have, and I want to strive and see if I can reach the village. And by walking down, you actually pass another hills and difficult paths, but you have a why, and that's the reason why you strive for the success and the big goals that you have in life and in
I love that. That's a cool analogy, because I think it's true. Your why isn't always clear on the way up, but then you can start to see it and understand how all the dots fit together.
Right.
I would have never known that I could, invest in and support and be an ally to, underrepresented groups in America and actually help them, get access to technology. And now we're doing it, and I can see it, and it drives me even harder. And only because it went up that journey. Right.
And in some regard, if you look at the American market, you're also, as you mentioned at the beginning, you're also very privileged in some regard, because you have lots of high potential people in your market. If you look at the San Francisco based region, I mean, how many good techies are in the region there, how many good founders that you could possibly connect with. And something that I found very interesting in that regard is you have always been a person that likes to meet people. You have done seminars to tell people how things actually work. Now you do a lot of stuff online, and you teach people online. What has changed for your company on maybe on the thinking basis, but also for you personally, when you moved offline to online, and now you get feedback through online reviews and recommendations, and you don't really see people in real time? What has changed for you personally, but also for your company?
So most of the reason we were doing that is to scale. We can help more people that way. But I'm still doing a lot of sales, in person and doing
Okay.
a lot of, closing deals and building relationships. So a lot of that is still happening. But the general education now is one to many versus, 1-to-1 or 1-to-30. It's 1 to 10,000. So that's the way we scale, which allows us to, reduce costs and increase profit at the same time. So
Right. Makes sense. Okay. So you still try to be the representative for the company in order to understand what customers and what the customer feedback is.
yeah, I'm essentially, have learned how to do sales. So I'm on the sales team,
Right.
and so and that was a big lesson I learned, as a founder or CEO, that really I needed to be the first person to try to sell things and figure them out. And I needed to be out there putting, risking and getting shot down and then learning, more so than anybody else. And then passing those lessons on.
Got it. Got it. I mean, and you have also, I mean, in regards to like you just said, closing deals, which of course relies on relationships. If you look at your market, I mean, you have a lot of competitors that somehow strive for the same thing that you have. Maybe the difference is that the founder behind Treehouse is much more passionate for the actual dream behind Treehouse than maybe the founders of other companies. Let's assume that. What do you think? How do you still manage competition, but still, we also talked a little bit on the pre-talk. How do you still manage competition in some regard, but also still believing that the vision and the mission that you have is the right one? How do you balance it?
I think focusing on a small number of things is necessary. So what we've decided to do is focus solely on creating beginners. So, we have competitors like Pluralsight that, have raised hundreds of millions of dollars, compared to our 13 million. Udacity has raised like $120 million.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
they've raised so much more money than us, that the way we can compete and win is by being laser focused. So we're not trying to teach everything to everybody. We're trying to specifically teach, a small list of topics to a specific group of people, and we can be the best at that. So I think that's the way we look at competition, is that, we can be better long-term by focusing and caring less about scale, and saying, we don't have to have, 100,000 customers right now. What we care about is being really, really effective for the customers we have. So it's constantly about focusing everybody down.
Got it. And I mean, a lot of people in my community also follow Tim Ferriss, of course, and he always says if you have 1,000 customers that are happy with your product, you can earn possibly the same amount of money that another company has that has like 15,000 customers. So it really doesn't make a difference. You just need to find like a certain niche that a company wants to be passionate about and really build on the niche that you like.
Yeah, and just start there, and build a really great business that supports your customers, that makes a difference, and then try to scale it, versus like the other way, scale and then try to figure out, if you have a business that is viable.
Right.
I do think I'm more driven than my competitors' founders.
Right.
I regularly say you'd have to kill me to get me to stop working on Treehouse, and then I would still crawl out of the grave and keep going. I'm really driven, but that's because I understand that why at a very, very deep level, and money doesn't drive me.
Right.
I mean, I want to deliver value to my shareholders, but ultimately impact is the most important thing.
Right, right. And you can, of course, you have walked up that hill that we described, and you have found your why. I think that's a big difference here. And a lot of people in Germany, especially, they're very concerned about where technology goes and how technology is used in some way. Of course, if you look at, I don't know if you have the same word for it, but GAFA, Google, Apple, Amazon, and Facebook, who somehow, of course, lead the world in some regard. And coding gets more relevant, design gets more relevant, strategic design gets more relevant. I just had the the chief designer of SAP in the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he also described how visionary SAP actually thinks as a German company, but of course acting globally. What would you tell people in a European market, of course, or in a global market? How is technology changing, especially if coding somehow gets something that can be substituted in any way, because there's so many good coders out there? How do you think technology is going to change?
I think, for the next 10 years, we're going to see a wave of, massive job creation in tech, because, we're in a space where, software is eating the world, right? So everything we're touching and using is now having software inserted into it, or, hardware is being driven by software. So I think we're going to see that continue. So I think we're going to continue to have a major talent shortage. And so the way I think companies should think about it is consider creating talent instead of hiring it out of college. I think there's going to be a massive shift in the next 10 years on how people source talent. And I think it's going to be from apprenticeship. So that's the big lesson here. Coding, designing, these are all things that are high level trade jobs.
Right.
It's not computer science. It's not something you should learn in university. It's something you should do on the job. And that means we'll see a general decrease in the salaries, but they'll still be very well paid. They'll still be wonderful jobs, to have. So I think that's where we're kind of going.
Right. Understand. Okay. So you really think that there's a movement going in regards to, of course, we have more coders, but we have less, the market gets less for the coders, and therefore salaries decrease. But of course, still I like the point of how you described that the apprenticeship actually opens the door for companies to actually have good talent, because I think what we have done very well in Germany, at least, is to have those apprentices and really build people, but it was more on jobs that were hand focused and not technology focused. And now companies, and really big companies, have the challenge to be attractive for young people, because they don't know how they actually can get attractive, and technology is so far away from their thinking that they don't have feeling for how they can actually create talent on the go and on the process, because they still don't have a structure and a strategy to maintain and build up good talent.
Right. Yeah, there's good talent, it turns out, literally in your neighborhood. You just have to open the door and create a path, right? And that talent's going to be more loyal. It's going to retain longer. It's going to be harder working, versus entitled talent that's coming out of the university program that will essentially go to the highest bidder, right? It's not sustainable. So
interesting. Thank you for your thoughts there. I mean, that's super interesting, I think, for the listeners here. One thing that also came up from one of my followers and listeners, because he said, please ask Ryan, because apparently people have been aware of you and the leadership styles that you have. And I think in my research, I've watched like a Instagram live, whatever, with you and Gary said you're one of like the most compassionate leaders that he knows. And I can totally feel that since you have very emotionally driven. What do you think? Like, how do you actually lead your company? I mean, you have 80 employees, which is quite a lot, and you have to manage them. How do you have certain routines, habits that you lead your people with, or do you have external leadership skills that bring you in and get you better, or what's your mission there, and your routines?
So the biggest thing I've learned is that you have to build trust between your team. So trust is a very vague word, so I want to clarify what I mean by that. There's a book that I recommend everybody reads called Speed of Trust. And Speed of Trust explains how to build trust in your team. And I did not understand how important this was for a big chunk of my career. Now I understand that once you build trust, then you can move, 10x faster. And so you actually have to invest a lot of time and effort into that up front, and then it pays off massively later. So that book explains the 4 parts of trust, but it actually gives you behaviors that you can start to demonstrate to build trust.
Got it.
So there's, I think, like 13 behaviors of trust. And then they explain, if you're trying to repair trust, exercise these 5 of the 12. Or if you're trying to establish trust, then, demonstrate 6 of the 12. And it kind of just lays out, a playbook. And it explains trust is 4 things. It's a tree. So imagine a tree. A tree, has roots, a trunk, branches, and leaves, right? So the root of trust is integrity. Do you basically believe somebody has integrity, that that they'll do what they're going to say they're going to do, they're a good person, that they're fundamentally good, right? If you don't believe that, like, you'll never build trust, right?
Right.
So you start there. Most people at work generally have that of each other. Like, okay, I'm pretty sure you're generally a good person. And then you go up to the trunk, and the trunk is capability. I'm sorry, no, intention. So what is this person's intent? Like, what are they trying to do, and do I understand it? Are they trying to, remove this department completely, because are they trying to hit this goal? Like, what are they trying to do? Once you understand someone's intent, you can better trust them.
Got it.
Because like, what's the reason why they're doing what they're doing? And then the branches are capabilities. So does this person have the capability of delivering results? Maybe they're not delivering results yet, but they have the capability of doing so. So do they essentially have the hard skills and soft skills to deliver? A good example is, if you hire an account executive to sell, do you think they have all the abilities to do that? They're not hitting their number yet, but do they have the ability? Probably. And then the last is results. So the leaves are the results.
Okay.
Eventually, you have to deliver results to get trusted. You can have the 3 things and never deliver results, and you won't be trusted. So you have to have those 4 things. Once you do that, it really unlocks your team. So we focus on trust first, and then we focus on being very clear about our expectations. So what are we trying to do by when? And so we have a 2-year vision, which is a poster that's literally on the wall outside my door. And it explains, these are the 3 numbers that we're trying to change by January 1st, 2020. We're going from here to here. And then every month we talk about that. Okay, here's what we're doing. Here's how we're doing on this goal. Here's what everybody needs to know. So it keeps everybody aligned with what are we doing by when. And then people can say, well, what's my role in that? How does my daily work roll up to this 2-year vision goal? So you start with trust, and then you establish, clear goals, what by when, and then you communicate regularly about that. And then you support all that with, continuing to build trust. And it's made a total change at Treehouse. We've really started to lean in on this pretty heavily, last year, and it's really started to cause huge change. It's exciting.
Cool. Luckily, I mean, that's fantastic. I will definitely put Speedo Trust in the show notes if people further want to deep dive on that. Fantastic. Do you have a couple more minutes, or?
Yeah, let's do it.
Great. Maybe something that I think is also very interesting, we covered it at the beginning, is this whole routine part of you personally waking up at 4:30. Maybe can you give a little insight how you structure your day, and maybe also take us back maybe in the night before? How do you prepare for the upcoming day, and how does the whole day starts?
Yeah. So the night before, I usually look at my calendar real quick to see, like, what am I generally doing tomorrow? The problem is sometimes that causes me to think about work before I go to sleep. So I'm trying to like balance that, because sometimes I have trouble sleeping if I'm thinking about work. So that's one thing I struggle with right now.
Because you're so passionate, of course. Yeah, I mean, makes sense.
Yeah, and so I go to bed around 10 as when I try to be asleep, and then wake up at 4:30. One of the little tricks that I have is I immediately listen to music when I wake up. Okay. Because it changes my state of mind. Because I'm tired, I'm kind of discouraged immediately when I wake up, and listening to energetic music immediately changes it. Physiologically, it has effect on you. And so I listen to
With
music.
earpods or just with like a
Earbuds, yep. Just
okay.
because my family's sleeping, right? So
yeah.
so I kind of creep out of bed and my wife and 2 kids are still sleeping. So then I go downstairs and put on coffee, grab a protein shake and continue listening to music. And then I put all my to-dos, I kind of filter through them and clarify them for the day. What am I doing today? What's the top priorities? And then I just get to work.
With a pencil and paper or with
It depends. So I used to do pencil and paper, but I found it ended up being easier for me to have that be digital. So right now it's digital. There's no secret here. It's just
Asana,
like
or what do you
Asana. Yep. Asana is my current, tool. But again, it doesn't matter. It could be a rock on a wall. It could be just have your list and have it be the priority stuff, right? That's the key.
Right.
And then I just crank, try to get some of those key things done before my workout at I think my workout starts at 6. So I get a good hour and a half in, go down to the basement, get real sweaty real fast, and then finish in 45 minutes and then come back up, and then it's family time. And so we have good dedicated family time. This has been a key to me staying married for 14 years is making sure that I have dedicated time with my wife. So I bring her up a cup, 2 cups of coffee, one for me, one for her, and we sit in bed and we talk for like half an hour. And that's so important. I mean, we've literally done that for 14 years.
Right.
And it's a game changer. And so you just hear stuff and she hears stuff and you talk. And so that's been really key. Then have breakfast. And then I leave for work at 8:30. And then just work really hard. I mean, like I don't take breaks at work. I don't take lunch. I just don't have time for that stuff. I wish I did, but because I don't stretch my work hours into night, I finish at 6, like 6:05 exactly. I want to get home and see my family. So I can't like get work done in the evening.
Right.
And so I've got to like maximize the day as much as I possibly can. So come home, get home around kind of 6:20, have dinner, spend time with, the kids and my wife, and then hang out with my wife, and then go to bed around 10.
Great. And you somehow manage it. I mean, that's fantastic. And communication is very important to you with your family and your wife as well, right? To see how they understand what you're doing. I mean, waking up at 4:30 also maybe distracts your wife in a bit, but she seems to be fine with it.
She didn't love it at first, and now she just accepts I'm not going to stop. So I think she's like, whatever, just do your 4:30 things.
Fantastic. I mean, that's such a lovely finish word. I mean, maybe just as a thank you note for my community. I mean, we have done like I think 50 minutes of amazing content. Ryan, thanks a lot. Really enjoyed it. I mean,
my pleasure.
Just seeing a passionate person understanding technology, but also wanting to bring something to the world in general really makes me happy, and I think makes the people happy, and really enjoyed the interview. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Fantastic. How can people connect to you? On Twitter, LinkedIn, everything is possible, right?
Yes. So if you just Google Ryan Carson, I'm everywhere. So I'm Ryan Carson on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Ryan Carson on LinkedIn. Been really active on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's been really great for me.
Definitely,
recently. I'd highly recommend people start creating content on LinkedIn. It's bonkers. Like I think I've gotten like 50,000 views on a video that I made the other day. And it's just me like holding my phone and talking for a minute, so right. LinkedIn, check it out.
Definitely. 100%. Thank you. And looking forward to see you soon. Maybe in Germany soon. Let's see.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ryan.